Hey everyone, what's going on? Retire on Dividends here. Wanted to make a video specifically talking about NAV and aka net asset value. A lot of people, I guess, get confused when I make the daily videos about covering TSLY and CONY. And they always have more questions on how the net asset value works of the fund. So I'm going to do my best to explain it, and hopefully things will make a little more sense. So what you see, this is just the YieldMax website. So first, if you wanted to see the NAV, you go to a particular fund like Tesla, right? And you go down here. It shows NAV. Okay, NAV. Just think of NAV as the stock price, essentially. Sometimes they could vary, but for the most part, they match nearly all the time, because as you can see, the NAV of 994 matches the closing price of 994 for Tesla. Now, where does that come from? That comes from net assets. And you see above, right at the top, net assets, 826 million, right? So if you take that and you give, every person, every outstanding shares outstanding, you have to divide that into outstanding shares. You get $9.94 per outstanding share. So net asset value divided by shares outstanding equals 994, right? So that's basically the calculation in a nutshell. But a lot of people want to go further. They want to go look at the holdings. So here are the holdings, right? This is what it looks like from the website directly. Again, it's the same order when you export it, but it's always in the same order. You have the synthetic put at the top, and then the treasuries, two treasuries, and then it depends on the order from there. But in summary, you have the call, the weekly call, then you have the buy call, which is from the synthetic, and then down below that is cash. And if you hit download holdings, it's more of the same, right? It's the same information. It's just better to look at. So now I'm just going to show you, essentially from day one or transaction one, how does all that make sense into real life? So I'll do my best to explain that. Now, if you look at the top, I have shares, right? So, when they started the fund, all they had to offer was shares. So people can buy them. Right? So when the first person clicked buy, they bought the share. So that would credit cash and debit the shareholder. So again, if you go down here, I exported the holdings, and here we are. We have cash in green. Also in green is treasuries, because keep in mind, the cash always gets moved to treasuries, and that's so they earn interest. So think of cash and treasuries as the same. And typically there'll be a positive number. So even though we say credit cash, for purposes of this calculation, it's a positive amount. So again, credit cash equals positive cash down below. So someone buys the stock, this money goes into the cash. That money gets debited from the shareholders account. Okay, so that's day one. Okay, that's how the fund started. Okay, so now we have cash, right? So what do we do with that cash? Well, now they start to build their positions, and as you know, there's basically two positions. There's a synthetic and there's a short call. So they're going to use that synthetic essentially to do the short calls. And they're going to use the cash as collateral, for all of these transactions. So again, one by one, I'm going to take each transaction. So someone bought a share, that money went directly into cash. Okay. And now the synthetic was created. So what happened there? Okay. So the synthetic came, they did a buy call. So that buy call cost money. So that debited cash, and they did a sell put. Now a sell put will bring you a credit. So that credited cash, okay? Essentially those two numbers are pretty close. Typically the sell put is a little less than the buy call. So in the end, there will be a small debit to cash overall. All right. So then, we'll go through the buy call first. So they did the buy call. They debited, it cost them money. So it debited cash, and then it credited the NAV. Okay. Because when they paid for the call, they're going to only, that two things are going to happen. Either that buy call is going to be worth money or it's going to be worthless. So when they bought this call, it gets, that transaction, what color do we have it? We had it as turquoise. That transaction gets added to part of the holdings. So if you look in turquoise now, this is the buy call, right? As I mentioned, part of the synthetic. So the buy call is open. This is the current one, right? With a market value of 47 million. So it's worth 47 million. And keep in mind, day one, when they buy that call and that cash gets debited, that same second, the credit of the buy call that's on the NAV is the same exact value. Technically they can just close it out and make their money back, right? And just pay a transaction fee. But obviously they're not going to do that because that makes 0 sense. So the way it starts out is, they buy the call, that costs them money, that costs them cash, but this now sits on the net asset, portfolio as now a credit. So currently, today, they have a buy call with a 220 strike. This is actually worth $47 million. But if at expiration of this synthetic, it's not, Tesla does not go above 220, guess what? It's going to become worthless, okay? But as of right now, we could sell it for money, okay? Hopefully that made sense. Now let's go to the other side of the synthetic. The other side is the sell put. So the sell put, again, to create a synthetic, you have to do a buy call and a sell put. So the other side, again, is sell put. So when you sell a put, you're going to get cash. You're going to get a credit, okay? And again, it's typically around the same amount or a little less than the buy call. Okay, so that goes into cash, and then what happens from there? Then the transaction gets opened, and you have a debit on your net assets in orange of the same amount typically you opened it at. And then obviously as the stock moves up and down, the value will change. So here's the market value. Again, there's the debit, which, I know it shows a credit, but obviously keep that in mind. When I say credit up above, that represents the, positive amounts down below. And when I say debit, that's a negative down here. So again, this is a negative 70 million. Obviously, that's bringing down the net asset value. Why? Well, they paid us. Let's just say they opened it the same time as this, value here. We got paid 70 million essentially, right? But on the flip side, it's now going to cost us 70 million to close it. So our hope is, when you sell this put, it's a bearish play. You want it to go, above the 220, right? If it does not, this market value will increase, the negative will increase, bringing down our overall net assets. So that's how the synthetic works. So again, to recap, let's go back to the top. To recap the synthetic, there's two transactions, buy call, sell put, okay? Now, the point of the synthetic is to mimic the movement of the underlying. So now let's talk about that real quick. So the top part, they have the sell put, right? So as the stock, goes down in price, the market value is going to, increase, bringing our net assets down. But as, the stock goes up, it'll cost a little less, to close out that position. And at the same time, the buy call will become more valuable. But typically, the movement of the synthetic with these two values, as this, the underlying stock goes up, these two values will move, the same exact amount, depending on how many shares they own. As you see here, you have 38,765 for the synthetic. That's contracts though, so times that by 100, that's actually how many shares. Again, hopefully that made sense. Let me just continue, and then I'll try to hopefully explain it a little further in detail. But now they made the synthetic position, they have the contracts, and now they're going to do a short call. So when they do a short call, they get a credit immediately. That credit goes into their cash bucket. And again, when they get cash, they put the cash in the treasuries. So just think, when we say cash, it's cash in treasuries. And then what happens? And then that call sits on their net assets. So it's going to sit there with a debit value because it's going to cost them money to close it if they wanted to close it. So here's the call in when I make that purple, right? Yeah. So the sell call is in purple. So here it is. It's a negative, right? Because we said it's a debit up above. So that's going to bring down. So we now have two debits, right? So again, the pink debit this is the sold call. And now we'll just talk about the current positions. This is the sold call, which is a 225 strike. So if we wanted to close out this position, we'd have to pay that much. Obviously, we got a credit into cash when we open that position. So if selling a call is a bearish play. So if Tesla stock does not hit 225 by the expiration of this call, which is January 24th, then guess what? This market value you see here, this is going to go all the way down to essentially nothing. We usually pay a penny to close it out. Now, the other credit that's bringing us down, which is part of the synthetic, which is different, these have further expirations. This expires in March 15th. But again, selling a put is a bullish play. That's the reverse of you see in the purple. Purple is a bearish play because that's a sell call. So since they're selling a put, they want Tesla to go above 220 by March 15th. So we have two different plays here. In purple, the short-term play, we don't want Tesla to cap over the 225, or else we're going to have to cover the gap, of 225 plus whatever the difference is that it went above. So we want it to stay at 225 or below in the short term, January 24th, because we sold a call, we got a credit, and we don't want to have to pay a debit, and return the money essentially, if not more. And then on the top, the synthetic, the sell put, that's a bullish play. We want it to go above the 220 strike, which expires, 2 months out. As of today's date, of course. Today, for context, is Sunday, January 21st. I'm probably going to post this on the Monday, though. All right. So those are the reason, those are what brings the price down, the net asset total down. So hopefully that makes sense. Now, what brings it up? We kind of talked about this before. In turquoise, the buy call brings it up. So as Tesla goes up, especially above the strike of the buy call, which is 220, the market value of that buy call is going to become more valuable. So when the synthetic expires, if this synthetic expires above 220, two things will happen. The put that you see in orange will expire worthless, which is good for us because we're the seller, right? So, but since we're the buyer on the turquoise part, right, on the buy call, if it goes above the 220, now our position is valuable. So essentially we can, make a profit off of that buy call. So when we decide to close out the synthetic, we would do the reverse of here, right? The closeout would be, credit from the buy call and debit of the sell put. Okay? And then we'd have a new synthetic, which would be credit, sell put, and then debit, buy call, all over again. Okay? I feel like I'm confusing the hell out of everyone, but again, this is, I just made this really quick as I was sitting on the couch, and it made sense to me, but as I'm explaining it, I feel like I'm confusing the hell out of people, but I'm sure you guys will let me know. So again, in the end, quick summary. How did this fund start? Well, they created it and then people bought. So people bought it and then that money went to cash, okay? And by the way, if people sell it, credit goes to shareholder, debit comes from cash, okay? So as people sell, yes, we need the cash to provide them, all right? And then you have the synthetic, they made a synthetic position. They don't physically own the stock. They don't own the underlying stocks. It looks like they do because they mimic the actual movement of the underlying, okay? So that's what the synthetic is doing. It's just moving around, up and down based on whatever the underlying is doing. And then the short call is supposed to represent how they make money. The idea is this is a covered call ETF. We make money based on covered calls. But how is this a covered call if they don't own the shares? Well, they have collateral, and essentially that buy call you see that's like them owning the stock, right? But in the end, it's how it works out. The synthetic portion, that was all brand new to me when I saw these funds. But the whole thing is pretty interesting, and apparently we could do this ourselves. I haven't tried it, but I'm sure it's very risky. I would not recommend it unless you're an expert. But it's pretty crazy. So yeah, again, they have the collateral in the back, and they don't use all of it. I believe they only use like 80%. I forget what the prospectus says, but they can only use a certain percentage of the actual market, the cash, to do these transactions. Okay, that's to also give them a cushion if there's a big sell-off, right? And they have the cash to provide the people. All right, so in summary, again, they create this synthetic, which is a buy call, and it's a sell put, and it moves just like the underlying. That is the purpose of it. That is the exact purpose of the synthetic. Yes, sometimes we have to close it out and we make a profit or we don't, but in the end, the profit we make or the loss that we make on the synthetic, I think their goal really is to just net those together when all said and done. But if the income is greater than the loss, then of course they're going to have to pay us out some of that, all right? So think of it that way. But so if they don't make money on the synthetic, that means the underlying is just going down and down and down, which could happen. But keep in mind, they will make money, or they could make money on the short call. Well, they will make money on the short call if it's going down and down and down. So that's the good part. But we don't want the underlying to go down too much, because obviously our net asset value will take a hit, right? Because that sell put, as you saw, that's going to become more costly to close out. But again, the short calls, they sell calls weekly, they make money weekly, but they can also lose money from the short calls if the stock goes up above the short call strike price. So in the end, if you just want to make sense of the holdings, these, are basically it. Right? We have we have 6 transactions, okay? We have 2 for the synthetic, we have 3 for the cash, and we have 1 for the weekly call. Sometimes you'll have, 2 different positions on the synthetic, which is rare, but it could happen. And then more than, sometimes you'll also have the weekly calls. They would be scattered into 3 different transactions. This week, Tesla decided not to do that, so we actually just have the one line for the weekly call. Okay, again, that's in pink, purple, whatever the heck the color is. So yeah, so again, orange, synthetic, turquoise, other side of synthetic, purple, weekly call, green, cash. Okay, add all that up together. What do you get? You get $826 million. That's a lot of money. This fund is almost worth $1 billion. So if you take that, again, and you calculate, okay, what are the outstanding shares? How many people bought this? All right, 83.2 million. That's a big number. All right. So the value of each share right now is $9.94. Okay. So again, as the net asset value number goes up, the NAV goes up. Okay. Now, I don't know. I didn't even plan on talking about this, but maybe I should just bring it up. People talk about what NAV erosion, which again, I don't know. To me, it's just a scare term to push people away from the fund. But as long as you know how these numbers, this is the NAV, like this is it. This is the net asset value. So if the NAV goes down, it has to go down for a reason, right? Okay, if the underlying went down, then guess what? Our put is going to cost us more money to close it. So it will bring the net asset value down. Is that NAV erosion? No. It's the underlying going down, creating, a larger amount to close out the put. So I'm just, don't just take these terms and just, be scared. Just understand how these funds work. So there's, again, if you just look at it like this, okay, green, cash. Okay, that's cash. That's what people put into the fund, right? And then you look at, okay, orange and turquoise, synthetic. Okay, that's the synthetic. That matches the underlying. And then you go to purple, and then you say what? Okay, that's the weekly call. They sell covered calls weekly, and they make a premium. And hopefully they expire worthless. If not, they'll have to pay a little more money to close it. And then they'll try again the following week. And that's how these funds work in a nutshell. So again, I hope I explained this well. For some reason, I just feel like I was all over the place. I'm also freezing cold in my garage right now, and I got to go. I got to get ready for baseball practice with my son. But please let me know if this made sense, either by clicking like or leave it in the comments. If it did not make any sense, please let me know in the comments, and I will reconsider redoing it. Another option is I could do this on the whiteboard, talk about NAV on the whiteboard, okay? But again, just let me know via the comments. As always, this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. This video is for fun and entertainment. So hopefully you had fun and you were entertained, okay? Yeah, that's it. So if you're interested in tracking this information, all you do is go to their website, you export the data, and then you try to make sense of it. And anyone can. This is not rocket science, guys. So, but yeah. So that's it. That's net asset value, or NAV, in a nutshell. Hope you enjoyed it. I'm out of here. Later.